Hey, listeners and viewers. I am so excited that you are with us today because joining me in this episode is Lexi Limber Soderbergh, a teacher, tutor, and TPT seller who specializes in using the science of reading. And I know that is massive in the schools right now to support children with ADHD and dyslexia specifically. So she has seen firsthand how using the science of reading can build literacy skills in children with these specific barriers to learning and has created resources designed to help all the teachers out there and, of course, the homeschool parents. And the name of her store, if you want to check it out, which you definitely must, is Mrs. Lexi Kelly Tutoring. Of course, we'll pop that link in the show notes for you. So let's get into it. Lexi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be on here.
Awesome. I would love to know how your journey started with the science of reading and why you actually focus specifically on children with ADHD and dyslexia.
Yeah, my shirt says neurodiversity is my jam.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. If you're
I love
listening to the
this shirt.
podcast, it's very bright and colorful. And yeah, that is such a cool shirt.
And it's so fun too. I like wearing like fun, colorful rainbow things when I'm working with the kids too, because then it's more, engaging and exciting to talk. But yeah, so to get started right out of college, my first teaching job was at a independent school specifically focused on kids with ADHD and dyslexia. I got so much training while I was there, and I'm super grateful because I was actually certified through the Academy of 𝐼𝐸 Practitioner and Educators.
Okay.
I got my classroom certification, and I was working on my associates when I left the classroom in 2021 to tutor full-time.
Okay.
But the OG approach, the 𝐼𝐸 approach, has completely reshaped my whole teaching methodology.
Wow.
I went to Ohio State for college, and they were using a lot of the older resources like Fountas and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins, and the things that research has proven now don't actually help all students. And so it's really helpful that I have that tutoring training, but then also on top of it, being exposed to so many different kinds of kids, I started noticing certain things I had in common with them. And then I got diagnosed myself with anxiety and ADHD.
Wow.
So that was kind of like a full circle moment to be like,
Yeah.
I think that's why I relate to you on a deeper level, because I get it. Our brains work similarly. And then I have two stepdaughters that moved here in 2022, and they both also have ADHD, dyslexia, and CPTSD. And so it's been so neat to be able to help them as well. When Lucille, the younger one, moved here, she was finishing up third grade reading at a preschool level. And then last year she finished fifth grade reading on grade level. Like on her report card, it says on grade level. And she was so pumped. She's on honor roll this year in sixth grade. I went to her assembly and everything. It's so cool to see how much it changes and how much it really does help the students, because it's not just guessing. You actually get to see the results. And because I do, words correct per minute and things like that, I get the data to show wow, this is really making a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wish I had had those resources because as a teacher, in the early 2000s, there was very little to help you. And of course, the science of reading was not out at all there. And there was so little to help you with dyslexia and ADHD. We were getting all this different kinds of training on it. So I think it's amazing that you are creating resources specifically aimed at this, because these kids, it's just such a beautiful story. They've got superpowers. They're just different superpowers.
Yeah. Well, and one of the main things to diagnose dyslexia is that they have a high IQ, but their test scores don't show that. And how frustrating that has to be as a student in school to be like, I know the answer, but you just can't communicate it just because your brain's wired differently. It's so crazy that not crazy, it's science, but once you realize and learn the right things to do, it's just the brain wiring. You just have to teach it differently, explicitly, and use multisensory methods. And yeah, it's really neat. I could
Yeah,
talk about it for days.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I'm definitely, yeah, you're definitely the expert for sure. I'm curious, like before we get into your store, what advice would you give teachers working with children who have dyslexia and or ADHD and want to improve their literacy skills?
I think the biggest thing to make sure that you're using the right resources, like I said, at Ohio State, they were really like promoting Fountas and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins' writing workshop and all those things. And it was very much like about the feeling of your reading classroom. Like I remember leaving my reading class in college thinking, okay, I know this like environment that I want to create. We talked a lot about like how we'd set up our classroom, how we'd have, soft lighting and soft pillows. And that doesn't really help explicitly teach the kids how to read. But that was what, back then they were using. They were like, oh, well, they just pick it up. Kids with dyslexia don't pick it up. Their brains are wired differently. They need it explicitly taught to them. And so I think that that's the biggest thing. Like, make sure you're using, like UFLI or the resources on my TPT site,
Yeah.
things like that to make sure that you're getting the right things. I tell a lot of parents, if your child is still being given a Lexile level, like a A, B, C, D, or an L, or whatever letter they give you for your reading level, that's when you should kind of start looking at the science of reading instead, because the Lexile levels are not the same thing. Like that is they'll get it eventually. Let's just guess at the word until they get it instead of explicitly teaching it. And I actually got a quote from Anna Geiger's book. Do you follow her at all? She's the Measured Mama.
Oh, I've heard of her, but I haven't followed her. I'll have to write that down. What is it? Anna Geiger.
Yes, I bought her book as soon as she released it. It's so good. This is a really good resource too for teachers and parents as well.
Reach all readers. Okay, we'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, I put a quote down from it that says, "The brain does not have just one area responsible for reading. Rather, multiple parts of the brain work together. Explicit instruction and phonemic awareness and letter sound correspondences rewires the brain for reading."
Wow.
I was like, yes, that is worded so perfectly.
Exactly. And I think it's important to understand that we're not saying, that there's not a place for Fontenay Spinal. I always get the name like the FMP and Lucy Calkins. It's just that strategy is not the best strategy for students who are struggling to learn how to read. That the phonetic, working with phonics, it's just really proven to allow that repetition, right? Allows you to be able to pick it up just a lot quicker. And I know you used an acronym when you were explaining that, was like what teachers can use. It was ICLI or something like that. What was that acronym?
UFLI.
Okay.
It's the University of Florida Learning Institute. They have so many free resources on their website. Like they have full slideshows that you can use in the classroom with your students. They have lessons and everything already all put together for you. And that is the science of reading research is with the UFLI.
Okay. That is very, very good to know. And so I want to hear a little bit about your resources with growing the store, but I'm actually curious, do you remember what your first product was and how you decided to finally go and actually start the store?
I think my first products were my fluency stories. So I used these when I was in the classroom. Every Friday we had Fluency Friday, and the kids would get in partners and they would read this story. So it's a whole PDF. It's not just, one story. It's the story. And then we also do, before the story even, there's a heart words heads up. So the words that you have to memorize by heart, like the words the, who, how, those ones. I have a page of that first, so you can explicitly go over that with the students. And it kind of gives you as a teacher or a tutor too, like a little bit of feedback of, oh, they're really struggling with who versus how, or the different theirs. And you can kind of get that information before you even read the story, and then also kind of explicitly go over it with them. And then after that, the heart words heads up, then you have the fluency story, and there's 6 times to read it. So 3 times for each partner. And when I do it with tutoring, I'm the partner. And then the student gets to hear that model prosody and fluency of someone who has been reading for a while. And something that's kind of fun that my students like to do is they'll time me, but upside down. So they keep the story facing them, and I'm sitting across from them and I read it upside down, and they time me to see how much faster I get, because it does, repeated readings really helps increase your fluency and your speed and your rate. And so it's really fun to kind of like get them involved in like a little game with it too. And then, so they highlight the concept words. There's 5 different stages or steps in the way that I teach OG. The school that I taught it had it broken down into 3. Everyone kind of breaks it up a little bit differently. But I've got 5 different stages. And so the first one's, just like your short vowel sounds, your simple CVC words like cat, bat, all those. But the stories are kind of silly because I wrote them and I wanted them to be interesting, not just like that cat sat.
Yes. What you mean.
Because decodables can sometimes get a little dry, but these, like, there's a pet hen named Trix who doesn't like to sit, like just silly little things that the kids can kind of picture while they're reading. So they highlight the concept words. Each passage has between 10 and 20 of the concept words. And then after they highlight it, they read it through 3 times back and forth with their partner. And then after that, then the next page is ABC order. So they take all the words that they've highlighted and they put them in ABC order. And this is the way that I have scaffolded it too, is that the earlier stages have the ABCs listed at the top of the page. So the kids can kind of check off, okay, I did A, now B, now C. And then as they get more used to it and start to hopefully internalize that ABC order a little bit more, I've taken away the scaffold on the higher levels, but I also have it included in like the end. So if your student does need it, they can use it. Or you can even have them list the ABCs at the top if they need that tool too. Just different ways of, approaching different types of kids and the kids that need the more support and need less. And it also helps because when you're putting them in ABC order, the kids are kind of manipulating the words without really noticing it. Like they're not having to sit down and spell, but they're reading the word list and they're focusing on that first sound and then the second sound. And it's really helps it internalize into their brains. And then when I do a spelling assessment, I'll use those words later. And it's so cool to see when they're like, oh, we read that. I'm like, yeah, you remembered.
Yes. That is incredible. And I think also the fact that because it's linked to the science of reading, it's not grade specific. It's more about figuring out, okay, does the child need help from the beginning, or maybe they know some sounds, they can start from here. Because it's scaffolded, it could be used with any grade. It's just more of an idea that, oh, you need help, building your reading skills.
Yeah, and this specific strategy. So if they are struggling with VCE or with R-controlled words, like you can go and pick those specific stories. Like in step 1, I have when S makes the Z sound, and it's all about, they go to go catch some like frogs in a net and stuff like that. And so a lot of my older students, even though that's step 1, I still have them do that story because the Z sound is kind of tricky to kind of figure out when it is. But as they're doing it, they start to notice, oh, it's after all these hard consonant sounds. I'm like, yes, that's the point. So it's really exciting to see and to be able to use the different pieces and parts. And then there's also a quick comprehension check too at the end, where I either have them in the first few steps, it's drawing a picture. And then, if your student hates drawing, like I hated drawing as a kid, you can also write your own story using the concept words. So you can do either or, which gives the kid their chance to kind of flex their creativity in the way that works best for them. But also you as the teacher get to check their comprehension, like, oh, like, why is that pet in the cage? Or where are they sitting over there? Like, oh, they're on Bob's dad's deck and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And so I'm assuming, like, when did you exactly start your store?
I went full-time tutoring in 21. I don't know if I put everything up in 21 or if it was more like 22.
Okay. So did you have the products? Then you were like, you know what? This is a great opportunity to sort of put my stuff out there. What like prompted you to finally start the store, would you say?
I had shared them with a lot of my teacher friends. There were 3 different teachers the year that I left the classroom that I was like really close with, and we all 3 went into tutoring. And
Okay.
so we shared resources regularly. And everyone was like, well, what do you use for fluency? What do you use for fluency? I was like, oh, I just made these. Like, this is what I used in the classroom too. And I would share them. I'm like, oh, I can share these with a lot more people if I put them out on Teachers Pay Teachers. So I have a free one, the vowel Y one. Y says I at the end of a 1 syllable, and Y says E at the end of a 2 or more syllable word. And I have that whole thing on my TPT store for free. So you can kind of check it out and see how the flow goes and see how it helps your students before you dive into buying the whole step. And then I also have them all bundled together if you want all of them.
Okay. Okay, cool. And I'm curious, like from the beginning until now, was there anything that you were doing that you stopped doing that maybe didn't work, or anything that you maybe changed from the beginning to now?
I watched oh, sorry, that Roomba's loud. It just kicked on.
No way.
We just moved it because we were getting ready to put up Christmas decorations yesterday. It's not usually in my office with me, so I
Oh.
didn't even think about it. Hopefully it's not too loud.
Oh no, it's fine. I can cut it out. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So when I first put everything out there, I just kind of put it out the way it was. And then within the past few weeks, have been doing more research on TPT and how people get more traffic and get more sales. And a lot of things said, to do the thumbnail pictures and the cover art and like make them all kind of match. And so that's something that I did like just within the last like 2 weeks. And then also adding more resources to my store. So I had my 5 steps out there and that was kind of it. And then I was watching a webinar put on by TPT, and the person they interviewed had like 200, 300 resources. And she's like, yeah, I add that many every year. And I was like, oh, I have 10. So now I have 13, which is way more than
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. But I'm slowly starting to just kind of add more because, as teachers, we make so many of our own resources.
Exactly.
And then they just sit in our Google Drive or our desktop for forever. And I want to be able to share them and have other people use them because sometimes, it's the day of a lesson and you're like, oh, I don't have any, OR stories that we can use. Like we've already read about the horn so many times. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's something that teachers, in the beginning, it might be better just to kind of try a few different things, right? If you don't know exactly where your niche is at the beginning, or even if you do, still put out other things and see what tracks, see what might sell better and what teachers maybe want more when you're like, maybe you've got 10 products and this one product sells really well, then you could make more of that, right? So you could just start pulling out of your Google Drive at any point, because it's like you say, we all have these products that we have like implemented in the Google Drive, and I like, saved in our Google Drive. And I like that you're saying, watch the webinars. Like if you do want to actually make it work, you do have to do some learning about it. Right? You do have to.
We didn't go to business school. We didn't learn sales.
Exactly.
Like we learned how to teach kids and we're really good at that part. But it's the sales part that is hard when you shift away from the classroom, whether you're tutoring or teaching or whatever you're doing next. But it is helpful to hear from other people that have been in that same space as you, which is why I'm so grateful for your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to have do a little series with the TPT sellers, because I see a lot of people asking questions, but sometimes having a video just like this, it could answer a question that one seller has, right? Without having to wait for their answer. So definitely I'm looking forward to that. Do you think you are going to focus strictly on the science of reading? Are you going to, so for your next products, are you going to look in your Google Drive? Are you going to question your, your colleagues? Are you going to look online? Where are you going to get your inspiration from, do you think?
I should post and like ask questions about what resources people need. That would be a really good strategy. Thank you for that.
No problem.
I do have a list from my Google Drive. I sat down the other night and like made a list of what products need what like tightened up, or if I just need to make the cover page or whatever I need to do for each of those. So I have a plan on what to do because I'm expecting a baby in February. So I'm hoping that thank you, as I, beef it up a little bit more, that can kind of help just run in the background while I'm focused on the baby instead of being so stressed out about money because I won't be able to go to people's homes and tutor, come February. So right now I do online and in-person tutoring. And then starting in January, I'm going to switch it to all online. And so that's going to be a shift. And then once the baby comes, I'm going to take a few weeks off and that'll be another shift. So I'm hoping to try to get these things in the background just running smoothly before everything changes.
Yeah, great. That's a great idea. I would also suggest maybe, since you know a lot with the science of reading, just checking through the posts on the Science of Reading Facebook page and seeing what teachers are saying. And if there's anything that they're looking for or that they would like to have, that could definitely be something to think about. Because once you create the product, like you save the post, and then once you create the product, you're like, hey, I've got this product, like go check it out.
I just wrote that down. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That's why I'm here. I'm curious, Lexi, have you seen any tips or tricks given by other sellers that you would like to try in 2025 or even like now in December?
Yeah, I watched your video with 𝐂𝐿𝐿 and I think that she recommended to Google search or just go on Pinterest and see like the keywords and what else comes up when you search. So, science of reading or fluency stories or ABC order. So that's on my next to-do list, is to just kind of search and pick out those keywords and then be able to use those. Because I use ChatGPT a lot to write my descriptions.
Yeah.
And I'll say optimize for SEO. But now I can also add using these keywords because that's what keeps coming up. And so I'm excited to kind of add that into my planning.
That's perfect, because it really all does come down to how are people wording the question, right? When they ask on Google, what are they actually asking for? And Pinterest is great for that because you just have to put in the first few words of Pinterest and it will come up with the main questions that have been asked. So then you can, that's how people are saying it. Okay, I'm going to go and check that and see, put that SEO, put those words into my explanations, which is perfect. Cool. Yeah. I'm so glad you liked the video. That video with Katie is what has inspired me to do this, because it was so great talking to her. And I saw that people have watched that video. And I think the more sellers,
it's full of so many good tidbits. I've got like half a page of notes over here from it. One of my daughters saw it. She's like, why are you taking notes? Like, you're not in school. I was like, this is school for me.
That's it. It is. No kidding. Like, we are learning here. We are learning together. How do we
and also writing it down like helps it stick in my brain. Yeah. I am ADHD myself. And if I just listen to it, it kind of just goes in one ear and out the other. Whereas if I write it down, I can go back and I can read it. But also just the act of physically writing it down helps me so much.
100%. I'm the same for sure. What is my favorite question? What is one piece of advice you would give a new TPT seller right now?
So it's really hard when you're new on TPT and you go see the people that have hundreds and hundreds of resources and their stores are all nice and they all match and everything's pretty. But getting past that perfectionism, I think, is the biggest part. Like, Post-it is perfect.
Yeah.
You can make money off of something that you already have that you don't have to do anything to. You can make more money if you tweak it a little bit and make it pretty and all of that, but you can just put it out there as it is to get started. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to get past, is like, you can always go back and fix things. I just made my cover pages recently, but my planner, like the last page of my planner, I keep as my parking lot. And I use that same strategy with my students too. Like, if you get a really good idea and then you kind of go down that rabbit hole, you kind of lose track of all the other things that you were doing. And so when I get those really good ideas, I'll put them in my parking lot in the back of my planner. And then when I have time, I can go back and be like, all right, this is something I can work on right now. And so I went and did the cover pages and things like that. So post is perfect. Get past the perfectionism. Just get it out there.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Or even having like on your notes app, right? Like just keeping like, oh, I've got an idea for my TPT store, something I want to do. Boom, pop it on the notes. Like just have a running note of ideas, like your parking lot note. And, just once it's in your head, just get it down. You don't have to worry about it now. Come and deal with it later, but at least it's there. So your ideas are starting to compile of what you could post. And last question today, Lexi, what 3 things are you grateful for today?
So I'm really grateful to be able to connect with people like you and other teachers out there, because when you're in the classroom, you collaborate with your other teachers, you get to see other people and have those discussions and kind of brainstorm together. And then when you shift to online, it can become like so isolating. And it's really important to keep those connections. And so, you join the Facebook groups, you have conversations with people, you send emails, you do interviews, things like that, to just kind of keep that connection going and keep that inspiration flowing, because, your brain is only itself by itself. But when you can connect with other like-minded people, it can be so inspiring. Yeah. I'm really grateful for my family. We just had Thanksgiving here in the US. And so my cousin and my aunt and uncle were here. And family can definitely drain your battery, but they can also really recharge it. And I was
so true.
Noticing yesterday, I was in a much better mood this weekend than I was last weekend. And I think that a big part of it was just being around my family and having that recharge time. And then my third thing that I'm most grateful for is probably the flexibility in the way that I'm working right now, and the fact that I can make all these shifts. I've got this baby coming and I don't have maternity leave. I am my own boss. Yeah. But because I have the flexibility of teaching the way that I know helps kids, and the flexibility of doing different things like TPT and things like that too, it's really helpful to have these different opportunities to stay involved in teaching and stay working with kids without having all that, physical and mental stress. When I was in the classroom, I had 2 different doctors ask me to reconsider if teaching was right for me, because it was taking such a physical toll on my body. Wow. I had actually stopped ovulating, my body just kind of shut down, and I was trying to get pregnant at the time. And I was so upset. That's something that I've wanted my whole life, was to be able to have a baby. And then I got my stepdaughters and I was like, okay, well, that's it. Mm-hmm. And then we got pregnant. And I was like, oh, I think I was just too stressed. So it's been so great. I'm so incredibly grateful that I'm able to still do what I love in a way that works for me.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. And I think it's important for a lot of teachers out there to know that, if you are in a teaching position where you're stressful, they're not all like that. A lot of it has to do with the dynamics of maybe the admin or the school itself, but go and look for something else. Don't feel like you have to stay at that teaching position. Not everyone necessarily can come out of teaching like you have, but there are better positions out there. So definitely go and see if you can find something if you are in a similar situation like you were, for sure. And I see you've got your lead magnet. Is that to build your email list? Are you building your email list with what's the free guide about?
Yeah, so the free guide is if you do want to leave the classroom and start your own tutoring business, or just add some additional income, because I was tutored while I was teaching.
Me too.
But it was just kind of as a side thought, we met at Giant Eagle or at the library and just kind of did what needed done. Whereas, starting it as a business can be so much more beneficial, because then you can, use your business account, and then you can get the parents will pay straight to that. And so it's just set up differently if you start it as a business instead of just doing it, on the side.
Right.
So that you can sign up for the free guide to get your own business, and that goes to the email list. But parents too, if you don't want to tutor other kids, but you want to help your own child, I have on Fridays, I meet with my group students. And so on Fridays, it's just $45 a month, and you get OG tutoring, which can be like $150 an hour. So
Wow.
$45 a month is pretty good deal there. So I've got that. I also do one-on-one assessments, tutoring, IEP advocacy. That was something I added when my stepdaughters moved here, because I attended their IEP meeting with my husband, and we hung up the call, and I looked at him and his face was just like blank.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you didn't get any of that. You don't know what a CTOP is. You don't understand what PA is. Like, okay. So I do IEP advocacy as well too. I can attend the meetings with you, or we can just talk beforehand or afterwards and look through their IEP and kind of suss stuff out together.
I love that. It's such a great idea.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I just want to say, Lexi, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so grateful for you and everything that you're doing out there for teachers and parents. And of course, the children, like just building this confidence by improving their literacy, particularly, the ADHD and dyslexic kids, like, they have that extra challenge. So it's just so incredible to have you out there. And I really wish you the most success and prosperity, not just with the baby in Feb, but that's the best month. I was born in Feb too. So good stuff. And just like so much like success with your store as you move forward into 2025. I can't wait. I think we must get together maybe in a year and see how things have been going a year from now.
That would be super cool. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.